Hi everyone, welcome back to another anatomy video. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at the circle of Willis and some EKG waves. So please like and subscribe for more content, and now we're going to get into the first topic of discussion, which is the circle of Willis. So the circle of Willis basically looks like this kind of little person, or I like to think of it as an alien with these are the antennas, this is the abdomen, the legs, everything like that. So we're going to start over here down at the bottom, letter A. These are the legs of the person, and these are going to be your vertebral arteries. You can also see your vertebral arteries over here. They're kind of going through the spinal column or the vertebrae. Then we go up, the little abdomen region or the six-pack region is going to be the basilar arteries. If you ever hear Gordon Ramsay say the word basil, he pronounces it basil. And I always thought that that was really funny, and it kind of just helped me to remember the name of these arteries in the middle. Then we have the posterior cerebral arteries. These are like the arms of the person. Up here, the ears of the person is going to be your middle cerebral arteries. And then finally, up here at the top, the little antenna-like projections are going to be your anterior cerebral arteries. So these last three arteries are really nice because they just go in chronological order with back to front. So posterior, middle, anterior. So that's everything for the circle of Willis. Now we're going to get into some EKG waves. So the first thing that is good to know is that ECG and EKG are the same thing. They both refer to electrocardiogram, which is kind of just measuring the electrical systems within your heart or the electrical pulses and everything like that. Nowadays, the more modern terminology is ECG, but if you guys have ever watched old medical dramas such as Grey's Anatomy, they will often refer to it as an EKG. So we're going to go over the difference between systole versus diastole, kind of to establish some baseline knowledge. Systole is going to be when your heart is contracting. So the left ventricle is pushing blood out of the heart to the body, everything like that. That blood is going to create pressure against the arteries, and systole is the measure of that pressure. So, how much blood is being exerted against the walls of the arteries. While diastole is when the heart is relaxed, it's between beats, there's no contraction occurring. Now, when the heart is relaxed, what is that pressure against the arteries? So, it's going to be a lot less. If you ever hear of blood pressure being 120/80, that is like the perfect blood pressure that you can have. So 120 for systole, 80 for diastole. You can think of it as systole is your heartbeats, while diastole is in between those heartbeats. Now we're going to look at the valves and when they are open versus closed, what is contracting. So your pulmonary and aortic semilunar valves, these are the big valves that lead to kind of like the lungs and then the heart and the rest of the body. So when these are open, your ventricles are going to be contracting because they're pushing the blood through those valves out to the rest of the body. Now, when these are closed, your ventricles are not going to contract because the blood is not going to be able to go anywhere. So, in contrast, your atrias are going to be contracting. Atrioventricular valves, these ones are your tricuspid and bicuspid valves. Another word for bicuspid is the mitral valve. So when these are open, your atria are going to be contracting. They're kind of just like passively letting the blood flow through those valves and then into the ventricles. When these valves are closed, your ventricles are going to be contracting because your semilunar valves are going to be open. So closed atrioventricular valves means open semilunar valves, and therefore you can kind of differentiate because it's the same thing with ventricles contracting, atria contracting, atria contracting. So opposites equal the same thing, contracting. All right, now we're going to look at the P wave, QRS, and T wave complex. So the P wave is going to be this little pink wave over here. And during the P wave, your atria are going to be contracting, so they're in systole, and your ventricles are going to be relaxed. They are in diastole. And basically, this is kind of like the first heart wave response or system. Then you have your QRS wave. It's going to be this big yellow one over here. This is your heartbeats. So that big kind of like push of blood from the ventricles to the rest of your body. So your ventricles are contracting, they're in systole, and your atria are going to be relaxed, they're in diastole. Finally, you have your T wave. So after the heart has finished one cycle of contracting, then everything is going to take time to recuperate and be relaxed. So this is the relaxation period, and both your atria and ventricles are going to be in diastole. Nothing is contracting, everything is just stagnant. So now if we put it all together, first we're going to look at if the atria is in systole. So if the atria is kind of like contracting, then what ECG wave is going to correspond to this? So this is the beginning portion of the heartbeat cycle, and the very first wave, as we see over here, is the P wave. So that tells us that this answer is going to be the P wave. Now, if your atria is in diastole, if it's kind of like relaxed, then what valves are going to be open? During this time, your atrioventricular valves are going to be open. So that means that your mitral, bicuspid, and tricuspid valves. So bicuspid and mitral is the same thing. But these atrioventricular valves are going to be open so that the blood from the atria can kind of just trickle down into the ventricles. If your ventricles are in systole, meaning they are contracting, then what ECG wave is going to correspond to this? So your ventricles contracting is, again, that big heartbeat moment. It is the main wave, so it's going to be your QRS wave. Again, if you also want to like pause the video after the questions and write down your answers or just like say your answers out loud and quiz yourself, I would recommend doing that because this is really good practice. If your ventricles are in diastole, meaning your ventricles are relaxed, then what valves are going to be open? So if your ventricles are relaxed, they are not contracting, meaning no blood can go through those semilunar valves. And so your atrioventricular valves are going to be open so that, if your ventricles are relaxed, that means your atria is contracting and the blood can go down through the atrioventricular valves. Now, what ECG wave corresponds to this if your ventricles are in diastole? They're not contracting. This is going to be your T wave. Everything is relaxed. Nothing is kind of contracting. So it's the relaxation period. It is your T wave. So these are some common questions that might pop up on some anatomy or physiology tests. I recommend that you guys kind of like maybe go over this little segment again, try and answer these questions on your own, come up with your own questions. You can also put this into some sort of like AI thing like Claude and ask it to generate more questions like these for practice. So that is everything that I have for this lesson. I hope you guys kind of just gained some more knowledge and that it clarified some stuff up for you guys. Please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, put them in the comment section. I also offer anatomy tutoring, so if you need some extra help, then you can comment that as well, and I will give you guys some extra resources. All right, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day. Bye!